Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today, and what an honor it is to bring in somebody who I've admired from afar for some time, not only because she is a conduit to the divine, but she obviously is a very multifaceted person and somebody who I can see. By her own name, she is liberated. And to me, that is one of the most important things in this time because we have become more of a conformist society in the West, having to adapt to dogma and much more rigid thought patterns than maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago. And especially as it relates to the music of our culture, which is blues and jazz and modern day R&B and hip hop, and the magic of that original music is that everybody basically had their own sound and wanted their own sound. But what you have today is just a morass of mediocrity and also a homogenization of sound. And from what I can gather from my guest, she's bound and determined to continue to cultivate authentic roots music, modern roots music. And continue to inspire by being herself. Liberated Lorraine, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you very much. Lovely introduction, and I do appreciate it. I'm honored to be with you guys today. Hello to the audience, and you inspire me as well. So,
yeah, I always looked at you. I see in your eyes, I don't pretend. I'm not a vain person. I don't. Man's view of God is pretty egotistical. But it's pretty evident that in your eyes, I can see that you are a conduit to the divine. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about, where your ancestors, how far back you can trace the lineage of your ancestors.
well, sure, I will do my best. Really, if you want to be honest, I consider myself to be a Pan-Africanist. And when I talk about my ancestors, I only trace them as far as the North American continent,
Sure,
the
sure. Yeah, no,
plantation.
I know. But this is, I
Mhm.
don't expect you to go back to diaspora, to Africa. But I just
Okay.
wonder about, do you have Native American blood? Do you know what your bloodline is?
I don't. I'm gonna be honest with you. I do have some Native American relatives, and I do have some Afro. I do have some Jamaican. I do, my family is multi-ethnic, so multiracial. So, um, but I will say that we are, you know, very, very rich in our culture as it relates to North America.
So you do know that you have Native American blood. You have Caribbean. Well, that's where the slaves. That's where the cats came from Africa. They were brought here. But can you talk a little bit about growing up, like most importantly, like the spiritual ceremonies that you were, outside of monastic religion, sort of the um, some sort of rituals or traditions, spiritual traditions that you witnessed as a child when you really like first encountered magic.
Sure, no problem. So, what kind of things that I experienced as a child that gave me sort of that connection with the divine? Is that what you're asking?
Well, because you are a conduit to the divine. When you get out of your own way and there's no ego, and that's like the most pure, true nature of you. So my question is really like when you were inspired by what they call the Holy Ghost, when you witnessed something that you could not explain.
Well, so I have a deep root in church, the Christian church. I don't know if this is the platform to expound upon that.
Well, why? I mean, go into it. I mean, you
Okay,
just riff away. Yeah.
absolutely. My great great grandfather, his name is Bishop Vernon Richardson.
Oh,
He was
the bishop,
named
man, the bishop.
the he was named the Bishop of Omaha, Nebraska in 1991. And so my great grandfather, he is a well-known Church of God in Christ pastor, and this is the lineage that I come from. With that being said, my grandmother and her siblings, they are known and famous for a musical group called the Religious Souls,
How do you spell?
also
How
known
do you spell the last word?
Souls, Souls.
Wow. Were they?
Religious
So they were like
Souls.
a gospel band?
They were a gospel
Oh
band,
man, that is
one of a
great.
kind gospel bands, and then they became known as the King Cannon family. They have been in the entertainment business for as long as I can remember. However, they stayed true to the spiritual and gospel roots. So you can actually even find their records in vinyl.
Wow.
They're still selling on the market.
Wow.
You can find some of their songs on YouTube. One song that my grandmother, Sarah King Cannon, was the lead singer, and she is deceased. We lost her in 2014, but she has several songs that are on YouTube. One of my favorite is called Looking Through the Eyes of Love. And I just want to say that my family, they were before their time. And growing up, I had the privilege of sitting at the dinner table eating with people like Shirley Caesar and
Wow. Wow.
the
Wow.
Winans and those types of individuals. And I know that my family, the band, the Religious Souls, they have traveled all over the country singing, and they would do music for people, backup singers for people, and all of the music that they played in their songs were original. They were written by them, and everyone played instruments.
D can you talk? I mean, to me, I've done a lot of research, a lot of interviews on my show with cats like uh, Cyril and Charlie Neville, and they talked about going to Catholic Church. I think the denomination might have been Methodist or some. It was different. It was because uh, the priest spoke Latin, and they didn't know any Latin, so they would go to the Spirit Church, which was run by the Lasty family. That was in New Orleans, and Melvin Lasty, he had a drum set on the you know like where he gave his sermon, and there was like well, the rhythm coming out of there was intoxicating, but people were literally falling out of the pews. I just wonder if you had that experience early on, like where it was the sanctified music, the where yeah, where people were because I mean there's this been this huge disconnect in our culture about, and it's playing out now unfortunately with the virus, but what is the significance of music in modern culture? Is it to sit and stare at somebody's facility and watch them wank it, or are you supposed to liberate and let the body dance and have healing because of music? That's what the original intention of music was, and that's what I believe your family was ahead of the curve. And I just wonder if you um, if you could talk about a spiritual musical experience that you had. I mean, sitting at the table with iconic figures is one thing, which is you feel like you're in the presence of the divine. But um, did you experience the spirit of the church and the
So
mysticism?
we were encouraged to to connect with the spirit growing up. And there will be times when we would go to church. We went to church on Wednesday, Sunday, and Sunday night. Are you still with me? Because I'm getting it, it's breaking up.
No, you sound perfect.
Okay, so we would go to church, and the church that I grew up in was actually in Denver, Colorado. And we would go to church on Sunday, Wednesday, and Sunday night. And there would be times where all we did was sang and worshiped. And when we would be in our what we call our, you know, place with God, and
Yeah,
just allowing
yeah.
our spirit to surrender to God, we saw some very amazing things transpire. We saw a lot of healing take place. We saw a lot of restoration take place, and we saw gifts birthed in our services that were immaculate. I mean, people would get on instruments that they had never played the instrument before, never taken a lesson, but they would get on instruments and play them perfect. We saw people sing, and their vocals would sound like angels were singing through them. So I'm very open to the the collective worship. I'm open to collective worship. A lot of the times these days people say, oh, it doesn't take all of that, and when I worship, I kind of keep to myself and I keep quiet, and it's, they do it, from their mind. But we were encouraged to involve with the collective, and when we did that, I feel like there was a sort of energy. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but the energy would get so high that things that people dealt with or were oppressed by when they came to the church, when they left, they no longer felt that oppression. And I know from face value that we experience healing from wheelchairs, we experience healing from blindness, we've experienced healing from other physical ailments in the body. So when people say that collective worship is obsolete and unnecessary or it's not real, I totally disagree with that.
I love what you're. By the way, you're very poetic on that answer. It was a beautiful answer. Um, I guess this internalization of the quietude and the solitude of prayer. I mean, that's cool, but this is what I was getting at is this collective groove that would raise the frequencies and then the overall vibration of the universe. That's kind of what you're talking about. And I just wonder if you specifically could recall a time in your life when you came in. I mean, because the communal aspect, seeing somebody get up and play an instrument, they didn't even know how to play it, or somebody getting out of a wheelchair and walking. I mean, that is phenomena, and that is witnessed. That's witnessed by you and the spirit. And but for you specifically, can you talk about a time when you were going through a lot of dis-ease and you came into collective union with other people who were all rowing in the same direction, and you became healed because of it?
Sure, absolutely. In my life, I think that my most memorable time of coming in encounter with the divine, the Holy Spirit, is when I was 14 or 15. And I'm not going to lie, at this time in life, I had went astray a little bit from what I was brought up in. Got influenced by peer pressure and was involved in things that people would say I found myself, but I want to say now looking back that I was even more in captivity when I was living this lifestyle. However, I was invited to a revival, and I don't know if people know the history of revivals in America, but They were birthed from William Seymour, going all the way back to Azusa.
Hmm.
And so I was invited to something like that. It was called a revival. And at this time, I was visiting God stuff. I'm good. I grew up with all that when I was young. And of course, I'm just like 15. I'm thinking I'm growing. But of course,
Yeah, I mean,
15 is
I
not
mean, were
really
you
all.
really? I mean, looking back on it, was it dogma that made you think you were sinning, or were you just being a normal, like, experimenting teenager?
I was being rebellious. I had gotten involved with the wrong crowd,
Okay.
people that wanted to skip school and,
All right. So, I mean,
forget
yeah, but I mean,
forget about
you weren't
school
like
and all
selling,
that.
you weren't like a crack dealer or like, doing something insane or criminal.
No,
Did you do anything criminal?
no, I wasn't doing criminal things, but I was
Yeah,
rebelling,
you were on
talking
the,
back to
and a lot
to
of, and your
old.
parents, whatever, your family was like, oh, there's Lorraine going down the wrong path, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I started hanging out with some people who were who were gang affiliated. I
Mm.
mean, that was the most that I feel that I would hang out with those people. I was not a gang member, but you know, if you're not careful, like they say, show me your five friends, and that's how you're going to end up. So
That's
I
right.
was going astray. I was on the
Uh-huh.
track team, and I was going astray. And what happened was I was invited to this revival in Texas, and the pastor that was over the revival had came from Ohio. Well, I was thinking that I was some sort of tough girl hanging out with these young ladies that were involved with gangs. And he called me out. And I couldn't believe he called me out because he came directly over to me. He said, "Young lady, you need to come here right now. The spirit
Wow.
is telling me you need to come here right now.
Whoa.
I want to talk to you. I want to pray for you." And I mean, me being in my rebellion, I told him no. I said, "No, absolutely not." I said, "I don't know you and I don't want to talk to you."
Hmm.
And he said, "I'm afraid that if you walk out of this church today, you may not come back walking. We may bring you back in a casket." And I just kind of I was awestruck, and I said, looked around, and the church was completely silent. And I saw older women praying, and one of the missionaries came over to me, and she started trying to get me to come forward, and I told her absolutely not. Well, what ends up happening is he begins to tell me some things about my life that I hadn't shared with anyone, and I was basically planning to get involved with something with the group that I was hanging with that would have ended up landing me in jail. And it was just reckless. I mean, it was, I think it was like going to go steal or something like that. It was just reckless.
I understand. Yeah.
But he told me what I was planning on doing. And I didn't know this man from the man on the moon.
Wow.
And when he began to speak to me, he said, "You have such a bright future ahead of you." He said, "I see the glory of God all over your life." And he said, the enemy is trying to destroy your life. And he said, "And I'm afraid if you leave out of here today, your parents will bring you back in here in a casket." And he wasn't abrasive or anything. He wasn't angry. His love is what really convicted me because I could notice that he was concerned. And I know I don't even, it wasn't me. My feet just started moving, and my feet started moving, and I started going up to toward the altar, and I was just weeping. I was just weeping, and I was weeping. And before you know it, I had just surrendered myself, and I was filled with the Holy Spirit and speaking in unknown tongues. A lot of people say that that doesn't exist anymore, but I began to speak with unknown tongues, and from that day, about 15 years old, I began to know the divine for myself. I began to know what it was to have a relationship with the Lord, have a relationship with Christ, the Messiah, And I'm not saying that the journey has not been difficult, but every time I'm faced with difficulty, I know I can draw to that source for strength and I can overcome anything that I'm going through.
It's so powerful, and your aura is so strong because I can see inside of you the divine at work, and I just give you so much credit for, being vulnerable enough to um, take that, because it would have been really easy to. But I think the most important thing, Lorraine, is that when the um, when the cat that was basically being prophetic with you and saying, I don't know if you're going to make it back here and you're going to come in a casket, you felt it, right? You felt it. And you talk about people saying speaking in tongues, communal prayer, that those things don't exist. Isn't that because people have lost the ability to feel? That in so many ways, younger cats have more intimacy with um, technology, an inanimate object, than an actual, than the spirit, the divine, or even another human being. When people say it doesn't exist, it means they can't feel that. Do you believe that? Do you agree with that? And if so, um, can you talk to people about how you how you've stayed on the righteous path by being able to feel the Holy Spirit?
Yes, I will speak with that. The issue with the youth of today is that they have grown cold and they have become a lot more mentally in tuned.
Right.
They feel that their spirit is in tune when their mind is open up in terms of their intellect.
Right. Exactly.
And I've heard a lot of individuals say their third eye is open. And what I've experienced with most of the individuals who say their third eye is open is that they have become addicted to information. This is the information age, and they are able to access information very quickly through search engines. And so, in my opinion, the spirit has become dull because everything to the young people of today is about reason and logic.
Oh, you nailed it. It's in the head. It's in the thinking mind, right? It's in the
It
head. Yeah,
is,
that's right.
absolutely. And in order to get in touch with your spirit, there has to be a childlike
Exactly. I no. I,
way
I
of
want you to. This
connecting.
is so important because I know that you are part of the lineage to move forward. A lot of people would say things like, I don't want to be preached to, I don't want to be lectured to. I really do want you to talk specifically to younger cats who are in the thinking mind, how Lorraine dropped from your head to your heart into your soul or to the spirit mind. I think it is essential because when you think that your third eye is open based in your thinking mind, you're only on the surface. You're not getting to the primordial level or the multidimensional level of yourself. And I can see that you have. And that's not always a pretty thing, but you have accessed your multidimensional self for survival, for success, for liberation, for love. And I just want you to talk to other cats instead of telling them what they are. How can they drop below the surface into the primordial gut?
One thing they would have to do is they will have to allow themselves to be vulnerable. They will have to allow themselves to look in, look within, and say, what are some things about me that I need to deal with? Those deep, dark secrets, those insecurities, those days where they feel rejected. The society has taught them to numb themselves to those feelings.
Exactly.
We've all been through rejection. We've all been through heartbreak. We've lost someone that we've loved. We have not accomplish something that we set out to accomplish the first time around. And society has taught people to numb those feelings when they feel them. But I would say allow yourself to feel and identify emotion. And then when you identify the emotion, is it rejection? Is it hurt? Is it pain? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Then have a broken and a contrite spirit so that the divine can come in and add the supernatural healing or the supernatural wisdom or the supernatural comfort or the supernatural wisdom to whatever that emotion is that you're dealing with in your life.
I love it. I mean, that's what I see in you is there's a fearless quality to you, that you've pushed yourself out of your comfort zone on a number of occasions. I mean, how did you, like, you made a decision at that point when you were touched by when you were given that sort of, I don't know what the right word is, but that warning, and you heeded that warning, and connected with the divine, and allowed yourself to break your heart open and cry. But I want you to talk about, like, for someone like yourself, because like you said, life has not, there have been challenges along the way, and even after that, there were tough times, and I mean, that's just life. In order to feel, you have to learn to sit in the mess. Imperfection is perfection. There is no perfection. The idea of feeling is like, if it's uncomfortable, that's not a bad thing. I mean, can you talk about, like, how you've learned to sit in the mess and allow, even if it's not comfortable, allow that stuff to wash over your soul, and then realize that, maybe through yoga or dance or singing or whatever it is that your true nature is, you're able to cleanse yourself. But you really have to, burn. You have to burn. This is not like in order to get below the thinking mind, it's not always comfortable.
It isn't, to a lot of people, they're afraid to deal with that. I learned to be very courageous in dealing with that mess of a person that I sometimes find myself in, because I just really, to be honest with you, I learned to take heed from my elders. And that's something that many young people today will not do. Many young people today feel like they got it all figured out. And it is because of, like I said, their intellect. You have a lot of really bright young people, smart and all that kind of stuff. But life will teach you wisdom.
Huh.
And because at an early age, no matter what I was dealing with, I had respect for my elders, and I believed the stories that were passed down from them. The people, call it folklore or what have you. But I always talk to my elders when I'm going through something. A trusted elder,
Sure.
an elder where I can see the fruit though of their life.
Right. Right.
So intellect is a good thing. You always can know a tree by the fruit that it bears. So I was fortunate to have quite a few elders around that were producing good fruit. And they're all around young people. It's just that these days our youth have developed what I would call a rebellious outlook or attitude. And I don't think it's their fault. I think it's that they have yet to find someone with the authenticity that they're looking for. But I was fortunate to find and know people with that authenticity when it came down to worship and spiritual things. And so they always encouraged me to turn to God first, or meditate, get into a quiet place. And what they would say is, get in your prayer closet.
Hmm.
A lot of the times we're looking for answers outside, We're looking for answers in social media. We're looking for answers in books. We're looking for answers on the internet. It's very important that the young people learn to find answers within. And the only way to connect to what's inside is to get into a place of solitude and get into your prayer closet. Meditate. Don't, a lot of people are afraid to be alone. And I learned to love my own company. There's so much going on in the world. We're never unplugged. And what the young people have to learn to do, they have to learn to unplug and get into a place of solitude. And when you get into a place of solitude, yeah, a lot of ugly stuff might come up. Yeah, a lot of things about your person may be revealed to you that you didn't think was there, laying dormant deep down inside.
Hmm.
But once you get past dealing with that ugly part of you, you're going to also realize that there's a lot of good in you. And that's where the grace and the mercy to me has always played a part. Yeah, I know I'm ugly. Yeah, I know I have a dark side. Yeah, I know human nature is what it is. But I know that I'm loved still by the Creator, by the divine, and not just by Him, but multiple times in life when I was going through something, there was someone with a kind heart, an elder, or a person just with kindness in their heart that came along and spoke a positive word to me. And so we have to teach the young people that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to share with people you can trust those insecurities. And it is okay to say, hey, I need to get to myself and meditate or pray. I don't always have to be in the spotlight, be popular, you know, be a public figure or all of that stuff. But I'm great just how I am to those that are in arm's reach that see me every day. And those are the people that I need to be an example to. So in order to do that, sometimes we just got to learn how to, like I said, get to self and meditate. And that's really how I learned how to tap in.
That's so beautiful. I mean, um, I mean, I can't say that I'm like totally locked into your point of view as it relates to modern R&B or hip hop, but I do see a longing for authenticity or a reach back farther in the history. If you look at Curtis Mayfield or Marvin Gaye or Donny Hathaway, um, you know, they were singing about love. It was the neighborhoods were tough. They were segregated. In some ways, I think that built up a lot of strength within the black community, but still the songs were not about craven desperation and thug life and, you know, only having a few avenues to escape. It was really about love, and part of that was about accountability. And I just wonder, I mean, you're talking about taking, uh, you know, uh, if the elders got on you, you'd take it. You wouldn't dismiss them. You wouldn't say, "Oh, I know everything." I mean, you were humbled by it. Do you think that what we're talking about, this surface level of thinking mind, and I don't know what else to say because I am not going to pretend that I know what it's like to grow up in these neighborhoods. I was privileged enough to grow up in a safe neighborhood, but I see you getting upset on, not upset. You're pointing out that some of the modern day uh, uh, R&B music is not authentic in your mind. Do you want to like extrapolate on that, and then talk a little bit about if it relates to what we've been talking about, sort of the ability for the youth who now, you know, can really monetize themselves in this market, but what are the messages that they're sending out? Are they constructive messages?
Sure, I'll elaborate on that. And I never am going to be the person to knock down a person's gift or talent.
Sure.
I am not that person. People can sing beautifully, they rap beautifully, they dance beautifully. All of that, I believe, comes from the divine. There are turning points that I feel people have experienced when they have been influenced by materialism
Yeah.
and commercialization
Can you give an
of their
example? Can you
talents.
give an example?
Well, I am a hip hop conservative, is what I ascribe to. When I say I'm a hip hop conservative, I feel that that music was positive and uplifting and edifying. And I feel that the turn came with the gangster rap era.
Yes.
So I don't
Let me ask you a question
not,
because you. I mean, let me ask you why, regardless of whether it veered off the path of authenticity or not, why did it go from authentic, uh, uplifting, some would even say conservative hip hop to gangster rap? Why did that occur?
this is my outlook, and there are
No, go on. Yeah,
there's
this is
research that
your
I've
interview.
done to
I want
back it up.
your. There are
Sure,
no
and
right or wrong answers.
I'm gonna just be transparent. When you talk about hip hop, I think that there was a more of a conservative overtone for hip hop. And when I say conservative, I would say that people, they held themselves accountable to their actions, and they held themselves accountable to a being productive members of society, a
Mm.
standard.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't glorify crime, and they wanted everyone to stay in pocket, if you will. The youth, their hearts can get out of line. They can go into folly, if you know what I'm saying. So the music now, the rap culture, causes the children to go into folly. It causes them to, and I want to say it's almost a hypnosis type of thing. It causes them to do things and glorify crime, glorify, sleeping with your neighbor's wife.
Right,
It
and so
causes
so
them
I want to
to
be clear. What I'm hearing is there was a direct shift from taking accountability to no accountability, and then
no
yeah,
accountability
and
and being
folly. Yeah,
praised for.
yes,
Now, this is what I would say. In a society, in American society, when you can capitalize on crime, what more or what better way to get the youth to involve themselves with crime than through the music, through art? Even art, painting, used to be something to give you a feeling of beauty and
oh,
inspiration.
absolutely, yeah,
Now the art is like scary and
right. It's dark.
shock
Yeah, and
and
yeah.
dark.
Does that mean though that okay, like is that has did it change? Like I don't know. I just don't want to sound naive, but I mean, it just seems like we've been talking about the youth being very bright in the thinking mind, but is it are they in a more desperate situation than when you were growing up because maybe the family structure is broken down even more in those communities or there are
Oh, absolutely.
less
I
avenues. I mean,
feel
because it's like
yes,
the artwork is it's scary. I don't like that. To me is like that speaks to desperation and no hope, and I don't like that.
yes. There's a term that I always use. I put it on social media a few times. The ghettos of hope have turned into the ghettos of despair.
Yeah.
There was a time where we knew we lived in a ghetto, but we had hope that we could one day attain what you call the American dream, if you will, and get out of those conditions. And even while living in those conditions, we wanted to still maintain a level of class. We still wanted to maintain a level of keeping a clean environment and, a family structure. One thing I will say about words, and this goes to the divine, I really believe that The power of life and death is in your words. The power of
Hmm.
curses, the power of blessings, the power to prophesy, the power to self prophesy, the power to take yourself from a place of poor quality of life to a higher quality of life has a lot to do with how you speak. And the way you speak is according to how you think. So if you are thinking on things that are negative based on what you hear, you're going to speak negative things, and then your life is going to resemble what you speak. So a lot of people say sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And that's a lie. I'd
Well, if
rather
you
somebody,
because if you are shrouded in negativity, then you will become what you say you are. I understand.
absolutely,
Yeah.
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
More recently, I've had a personal experience here in Dallas, and I'm just going to say that I met a young man that I wanted to help. I wanted to uh, mentor him. I'm a publicist by degree and profession, and I got my degree from UTA of Arlington. And there was a young man who I met in a studio, and he was rapping. And I said, "You're really talented." I said, "Your lyrics are sophisticated." I said, I said, "Where'd you learn to write like that?" And he just developed this style of writing by aspiring to be in the music industry. But long story short, he was about 19 or so. His father had been incarcerated. His brother had been murdered. His family was very it had been broken up.
Hmm.
But I said, "Hey, let me help you, and let's clean up your words, your lyrics, and I want to introduce you to some people." And I introduced him to a friend of mine named Nico. He's a producer. Um, he's a white guy, and he's very skilled at what he does. And I bought this young kid to a studio. I said, "Hey, I want you to meet this kid. He's talented." And Nico said, "Yeah, bring him, come have him come through, and I'll do all this stuff for you, for him, for you, Lorraine." And he ends up signing a deal with another record label. He puts one of his songs on YouTube. They said, "Whoever song we like, we're gonna bring them on board with us. We're gonna bring them, fly them down to Florida, let him sign a record deal." He was that kid that they chose. Well, I noticed that when he got with them, his music became darker. He started putting more misogynistic lyrics in his music. He began to play with guns in his music. He became a gangster, more of a gangster in his music. He had a past of being a gangster, but he was trying to change. Sad to say that 2 weeks ago, I found out that this kid is on is being charged with murder. He's on trial for murder right now.
So I mean,
This,
what I'm hearing is that in order he got signed to a record deal, but in order to meet the bottom line, the racket, the business cat said, no, you got to go towards this gangster mentality because it's going to sell more. But in doing so, it corrupted his entire life force and purpose, basically.
absolutely. It was, to me, he self prophesied his destiny.
Is there like why? I guess this is not. I mean, all you did was introduce him to a producer, and then he cut a track, and then you kind of had no. I just are there avenues in modern day R&B where you can not get corrupted with a self-fulfilling art, like is that the only avenue? That seems to me to be a major issue when you have talented cats who just by their true nature can write, or they just have sophistication in their writing, but then is there an avenue where they will not corrupt themselves in a self-fulfilling way, or is it, or literally you're just an indie artist at that point and just basically struggling to make a living?
Well, like I said, the ghettos of hope have become ghettos of despair. And his main reply to me, he goes and signs this 360 deal for $50,000. Kid is 19 years old. He and I were together. I said, well, you're gonna have to, find a job and, do some grunt work, and it's the delayed gratification is what I would say.
Right.
The youth of today do not want to accept delayed gratification, and I feel that that was something that those of old times and those in the poor neighborhoods were willing to accept. We're here now, but with hard work and dedication and making the right choices and decisions, we can get out of this situation. If we become productive members of society and, you know, go to, clean up ourselves and keep our peers held accountable, we can become productive members of society. This too shall pass. This young man told me he was tired of looking for a job and getting turned down. He didn't have hope that he was going to find a job, and he had a little brother and his mother that he wanted to make proud, and he wanted to help his mother pay bills. And so he felt that this $50,000 360 deal was going to be the path to him becoming a provider for his family.
Then, I mean, do you feel like at a certain point, is it as diabolical as I believe it is, where you get to a certain point when, it's like, hey man, if you're really going to be a gangster rapper, you got to actually do you got to kill someone, you got to murder someone. Like, isn't that where it goes next? I mean, how does it go from what looks to be security to then being corrupted by the messages that you're being forced to sing because it's going to sell records to, well, you got to one off somebody in order to be a credible gangster rapper? Does it go into that realm?
What I think ends up happening is because these kids grow up wanting authenticity so bad. They grow up saying, I'm real. I'm real. You know, I'm the real deal. Everything that I say I do, I live by. And I feel that that is what they are captured. That is, someone knows that that is their mentality, and someone comes and capitalizes on that. So the moment they're talking about some stuff in their music, somebody pulls their card and says, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. I know who you are. You selling these records and saying you did all this stuff. We know you didn't do any of those things. So now at this point, because they don't want to look like they're not authentic, and because they feel like they have something to prove, this is where I feel it seeps in to where now they got to prove themselves. And I feel like those who are controlling the industry, they also know this.
Of course they do. In fact, this is really, Lorraine, I want you to talk to, I mean, we are coming up on Thanksgiving, and I'm so humbled to connect with you like this, and I give thanks to the divine for it. But what is what would your life have looked like if you had stayed? What is the life of a girl, young woman in a gang? What I mean, what and what would you say? Is that and are they once they're in at a certain point? Is there any way out, or what if there is? What would you say to young women who are going to hear this today, tomorrow, or after we've left this planet about if they have the opportunity, how to get out of a gang?
Wow.
Because
That's deep.
because you were in a gang, although you weren't really doing anything criminal, but you were hanging out with these cats, and then you had an intervention of sorts, and a revival, and then you were able to sort of get off that track, and there wasn't a bounty on your head, and you weren't you know like like a target. But if I guess it's two questions. Is it at a certain point, do you cross a Rubicon when there's no going back if you're a girl in a gang? And if so, what is your message to those cats who have not yet crossed that Rubicon on how to get out and why it's important to get out?
I will say this, that anytime you decide to become a part of something in that gang or mob or cartel, or it'll take you further than you want to go, and it will keep you longer than you want to stay. If at any point you decide to say no to furthering that pit, to deepening that pit, you're going to have to change your entire surroundings. You're going to have to almost become obsolete almost.
Mm-hmm. Or just be willing to almost be willing to just go to the beat of your own drum and be.
You're going to have to be ready to experience the being rejected,
Mm-hmm.
the criticizing, the ostracizing. You're going to have to be able to tolerate not being popular. You're going to have to go into all of those, you're going to have to experience all of those emotions that don't feel good to the flesh. You're not going to be popular with those people anymore. A matter of fact, you're going to really be seen as an enemy to that way of life. And I told a young lady, I said, the world loves their own. And once you're no longer identified as one of them, you become an enemy, because there's so many layers to this kind of life. I don't really want to get into it.
It's fine. No, I guess maybe to the point is that how did you get spared? I mean, you went through a lot of rejection, or you were out of these cliques, but were you ever, did you ever feel like your life was in danger, or do you feel like, because I think that's the scariest part, is that you have young kids killing younger kids now. I just wonder if, aside from losing friends or developing a whole new social dynamic or just breaking away, I mean, did you ever feel that when you made the decision to align yourself with the spirit, that you ever really felt that your life was in danger?
I will tell you that I felt that I was no longer accepted, and that if I didn't make a rapid transition, that it could have become dangerous to my person. So my mother moved to a whole different side of town.
Wow.
And we end up moving to the suburbs, and I was introduced to. I had another divine intervention.
Cool.
My teachers, my counselors. I got back in school. I decided that my education was really important, and these teachers and counselors, and they were not African Americans. Just gonna be honest with you. They were white Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And they believed in me, and they had an understanding of the inner city. I don't know if it was from their education or if it was from their spirit, but they understood what was going on in the inner city, and they didn't want to see me go back to that path in life, and they helped me.
And you were at a point when you were really, I give you a lot of credit because you were still young, but you were not cutting up, or, I mean, you really were motivated to, I mean, it was everybody was working in the same direction, right? I mean, you sort of just, not that you didn't have other things, but I mean, you wanted to Um, you didn't want to please them, but you wanted to strive to be a better person. So they were able to. I mean, they could see that in you. I mean, you were very workable. I mean, I think it's really interesting that because I'm not. I mean, listen. I mean, this country, 400 years. Um, Cats came over. Of course, there were plenty of um, black people in the states before slavery. There were plenty of Native Americans. They were the original people here. Um, but when the slaves showed up, the plantation owners justified to the indentured servants didn't couldn't understand how they could enslave people, and they said, well, these people are not Christian. If they were, their skin would be white. And so if they spoke their native tongue, they'd have their tongues cut out. If they played the drum, as a slave was caught with the drum, you'd have your hands cut off. Obviously, they worked and were slaves on plantations and worked to death and abused. And then when there was, quote unquote, the end of slavery, 40 acres and a mule to each slave, that never happened, and on and on and on and on. So you know, there's a lot of issues. People call it racism. I've interviewed so many cats from all over the world that I just don't really like using that word because I believe we're all one human race. But that being said, the only way we're going to move forward is by resolving some of these long-standing sins of this country. And I know what you're saying, where you got with some white folks who were channeling you to a better place. Um, and I recognize it's not as simple as white superiority, but versus I guess what I'm just trying to say, I'm trying to ask you is like, where does the accountability have to come from the systemic bias of white America for black people to not, because I feel like they get discouraged easily, they give up easily, and there's just so much resentment from all the past history that they just say, I don't want to conform to America. You said the word America before, like the American dream, and I would think that it's Lorraine's dream, not America. I mean, America, it's white power. I mean, at the core, the police, the courts, the family structure, everything is geared towards white superiority. That being said, there are many people that are just looking to try to heal the world, and those, and so you can't paint everybody with a broad brush. What are the things?
Absolutely not.
So I mean,
I want
just
to
tell me,
say
tell me.
this.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just rambling on, but I want you to say,
No, 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 no. You're
what I want
good.
you to
You're
say
good.
is like, what needs to happen in white authority, in the systemic institutional bias that needs
Mhm.
to change, and then what do people of color need to be accountable for in order, because it's not just one or the other. And that's why when I see you and I see the content you put out, and I can see your aura, you are an angel. So you're basically trying to bridge these two gaps with objectivity and authenticity. So lay it out for the folks. So how do people need to step up?
Well, this is this is a very interesting question. You know, you've asked me, and I've pondered on it for some time. And I think basically what you're asking is, how do we move past our birth defect of slavery?
Yeah, well, you see, I don't know if we can move past anything without resolving it. So you go ahead, you can riff on. I mean, it has to be. You
Hmm.
can't. You have to resolve something. And so, what is
Absolutely.
that? Is that reparations? Is that? I mean, it seems almost impossible to not defund the police, but turn into peace officers instead of, you know, police officers. That being said, we have all these, such lax gun rules. It's very complicated. But the point is,
It seems insurmountable, it's complicated. There was a time when I thought on a lower conscious, and the spiritual journey that I've been that I have been on has impacted me in two ways. It's impacted my spirit, and it's also impacted my intellect.
Yes.
I don't feel like you truly come into a connection with the divine if the spirit, if your spirit person doesn't at some point impact your intellect. And so, what these white people did for me, these teachers and counselors, they began to give me material and help me to identify some areas that I was struggling with. And they started to direct me to people who were positive influences in the Black community from slavery, in spite of the challenges that we face. Now, growing up as a Christian, growing up in that spiritual environment, I've always believed in good and evil. And in everything you deal with in life, there's good and evil. People say, for example, money's the root of all evil. But I tell people money's a tool. If a good person gets money, they're going to do good with it. If a bad person gets money, they're going to do bad this, to this point. There are people in this country from both sides who were impacted by the Atlantic slave trade in one or two ways: a positive way or a negative way, a good way or an evil way. And you can't clump everyone into one. There are white supremacists. There are police officers who are racist. There are police officers who have partaken in brutality, Black prejudice, hatred, and all of these things. One thing I feel about good, love, unity, people of all colors, all races, all nationalities can come together in one spirit around that commonality. When you try to group all white people as racist, all white people as supremacists, all white people, that is a character flaw, because you have to take each and every person, you have to let every tub sit on its own bottom. Therefore, I would say, when these white teachers and individuals dealt with me, they dealt with me from a genuine place, and they encouraged me and they told me that they didn't believe in the slave trade, that it was wrong and supremacy and racism. So they started the conversation out right, and they let me know where they stood. And that helped to disarm me and trust them. And then when I started to learn about people like Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington and Marcus Garvey and Harriet Tubman and all these leaders of the race who, in spite of the Black laws and Jim Crow and segregation and all of these things, they acknowledged the friendships that they had with certain white people, and they acknowledged the love and the bonds that they built with other abolitionists who weren't all African American. There were white folks who took a very big part in abolition.
Right. The problem is the problem is the only thing that we read
So
about in our history books is the white is John Brown. We don't hear about the black heroes. That's part of this. Anyway,
there you go.
continue.
There you go. And so when I also learned about William Seymour, the revival, I learned how blacks and whites and immigrants from all over came together to experience that impact with God, and that, that divine. Although I said they're woke, their third eye is open, and all this kind of stuff. If you are not wise enough or in tune enough to connect with people who have love and they bring back, and you're not there to look at a person's skin and say automatically they're against you, you have a lot of growing up to do. And you have no idea really what it means to be woke or be in tune with your spirit, because you have to let every tub sit on its own bottom.
Right.
And that's all I would say to this.
You know, um, I'd really love to do part two with you um, in the near future. I'd like you to talk about, um, in general, uh, how you have not allowed your overtime, because we are all human animals to a certain degree, and we treat each other like animals sometimes, and um, we're not as evolved as we portray ourselves to be. And there's a lot of hurt, and there's a lot of lonely avenues, and you have to kind of continually just pick yourself up and dust yourself off and keep moving forward. And I just wanted you to talk to the audience about, because you give a lot, and um, you are somebody who is, well, like the cat you saw before. When you see somebody who's has potential, you try to help them. So you're a giver. But how have you allowed your heart to stay open to receive love? Because I see a lot of people who have the divine, a deep connection with the divine, but because they've had a lot of trauma, they've closed their heart. And so they've lost that aura. But you have not. And I just want to know how you've l- learned to remain
Absolutely.
vulnerable.
Yes, love is a act of courage, and giving another person a chance after someone has hurt you, that's an act of courage. And the indoctrination that people have received through our institutions have taught us that you're more courageous when you shut down and you won't let people get close to you. Um, when I talk about being authentic, I tell people all the time that I can only tell people what I've actually done. And if I'm not doing, I don't. So say, if you're going to say you're lying, if you're going to say that you're courageous, you're going to have to dust yourself off anytime you experience hurt, disappointment, or pain. Our society has taught us to avoid it, but no great accomplishment has been attained. That is a conscious approach. People from all walks of life, all ethnicities, all socioeconomic, whatever you want to call it. These people had the courage enough to be vulnerable and get together and make something beautiful of this. We're not, and that is what love is all about. When people say they want unconditional love, they really, truly do not understand what that means.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to get over hurt, pain, and you have to be courageous enough and realize that. Yes, that's all I have to say about that.
No, we're having some connectivity. I think the spirits are at work. A lot of this stuff may not be suitable for the rest of the ears of the people. Um, can we do part two down the road pretty soon?
If your guests feel comfortable with me and the way I think and all that business, yes, absolutely.
All right, yeah, because absolutely. I mean, I think what you're offering is an objective, authentic, divine look at about the design of our culture and how to move forward. And I would love to explore solutions with you. And it's also just very humbling to um, connect with you. You're an incredibly wise, maybe shaman character. So Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you very much. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
happy.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well.
Bless you, my
Hmm.
friend, and I'll have this
God
up
bless
later
you as
tonight.
well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, cool. I'll talk to you soon.
Alrighty.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
Bless. Bye. Deeply ensconced in the divine with Lorraine. Thank you so much for being part of the Jake Feinberg Show today. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back a little bit later tonight with Aaron Spursky. Until then, peace.